Hi, my name's David Wortley, and I want to show you in this part one of a video in preparation for the Speaker Masterclass next Wednesday on July the 1st at 7 o'clock UK time. I want to show you why human beings have got the advantage over AI when it comes to live public speaking, whether that's in person or online. Now, you probably noticed at the beginning of this video was an introduction which showed me disappearing. There are many people in this world, I'm sure, who would like to do the same kind of thing, but I thought I'd start off by just showing you the tool that I use to make myself disappear. And this is something I call the PSAraliser. For those of you who have seen the film Men in Black, you may remember that Men in Black came from the future into the past to try and stop bad things happening to the world. And when they came into contact with citizens in the current time, they used this device called the Neuralizer. And the idea behind the Neuralizer was that when they held it up and switched it on, it made everyone forget that they'd ever seen the Men in Black. Well, the PSAraliser aims to be a little bit more sophisticated than that, because my intention was that if you enjoy my presentations and I use the PSAraliser will not make you forget it. It will help you to remember the messages that I'm trying to get across. However, if you don't like my story, you don't like my live presentation, if I use the PSAraliser, then you will forget that you've ever seen me, you forget my name, forget everything that you've seen. So I just want to give you an illustration of how the PSAraliser might be used in an online presentation. So here is the PSAraliser. I'm going to switch it on. Hey presto, I disappeared. And that might be useful on some occasions. But the point about this part one of my presentation is to show you reasons why human beings have an advantage over AI when it comes to public speaking. And to illustrate this, I'm going to tell you about few speakers that I've met that I still remember many years later. And the first of these is a guy whose name I've forgotten, and I cannot even find it by using all of the search tools at my disposal. But this was a man who is no longer with us, unfortunately, that I met on a cruise ship. And it was my first cruise ship presentation. I'd been headhunted by someone from an events company who'd seen me speak at an exhibition in Olympia. And they asked me if I would like to go on this short cruise to the Scilly Isles to do a talk. Now, it's the first time I'd spoken on a cruise ship. I'm familiar talking to audiences in both in person and online at the time, but I'd never done it on a cruise ship. And the idea behind this cruise ship journey was to bring buyers and sellers together and entertain them over a 2-day cruise with some guest speakers. And I was fortunate enough to be asked to be one of those guest speakers. That's the first time I've ever done this, so that it was really, I was still very much learning, if you're learning the trade. And these talks took place in the cruise ship auditorium, which housed probably 300 or 400 people. And I watched this guy, and it's one of the presentations, talks that I remember and I will remember for the rest of my life. The guy wasn't a particularly good speaker, in my opinion. He told some jokes that were marginally funny, but the thing that struck and resonated with me was his story. Now, he told a story about how he had been a firefighter. He left school. That was his ambition, to be a firefighter. And he and one of his school friends joined the fire service at the same time. They worked in the same fire station, and their lives really took different trajectories. His friend became successful, had his own house, had a happy marriage, had a bit of money to spare, went on nice holidays, whereas this guy really didn't have any holidays. He wasted his money, he drank, and he got obese. And one day, his boss called him into the office in the fire station and said, and I'm not going to use the same words that he used, but essentially saying, "You fat chap, you either lose your weight or you lose your job. You've got a choice." And so he was devastated, because this was all he wanted to do. He wanted to be a firefighter. So he went outside into the yard and he looked up into the sky, and he saw a jet going across with some vapor trails behind it. And in his mind, he imagined that his friend, who was already on holiday at that time, was on that plane, going away to have another good holiday. And it made him very miserable. He reflected on his own life and wished he had the same things as his friend. And so he resolved on that day to actually do something about it. And so, bizarrely, he entered the Ironman challenge, which involves going across the desert. It's a very demanding exercise, but he trained, he lost some weight, he did the Ironman challenge, and he became something of a local celebrity. And he was interviewed by the local paper, and he was invited as a result of that to give a talk to some school children in a swimming class. So he gave this talk about the Ironman challenge and the story that I've just told you. And it just happened that there was a senior executive from a building society who was watching him. And after his talk, he said, "Oh, this is a fantastic, inspiring story. Would you come and talk to my board and inspire them, just to show how human spirit can be so transforming?" So he went and he did the presentation to this board meeting, and he was paid handsomely for it. And that was the start of his speaking career. And he even wrote a book, which I understood was called Vapor Trails in the Sky, because that was the thing that brought to mind the difference between himself and his friend. I've subsequently tried to find out what that book is and who the author was, without success. But I do know, in the story that this guy told, that his life was transformed. He became a public speaker. He spoke at corporate events. And as a result of that, he was able to lead a life in which he no longer needed to work. From his book sales and his talks, he could play golf twice a week, and his life was totally transformed. Now, that talk had an impression on me. It wasn't particularly that he was a particularly good speaker, but he resonated with me that someone had transformed their life, and it was the story that was the most important thing. So I kept in touch with him after these cruise talks, and I got a message back from one of the emails that I sent out to him from his partner. And his partner contacted me to say, unfortunately, this chap had died. One Saturday morning, they were in bed, nothing obviously wrong. He complained of a headache, and half an hour later, he was dead. And I felt really sorry that he'd been cut down in his prime. And I think he must have been probably in his 40s when I met him. And his partner said to me, "No, please, don't feel sorry for him, because he died doing what he loved, and he died knowing that he'd had a positive impact on other people's lives." So here's the first person, really, and the most memorable person who made a presentation. And I'm doing this talk just to illustrate the fact that it's the human factor which has an advantage over AI.